What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. In today's video, we're going to be continuing our Hidden Gems series on MLB The Show 23, covering the second base position. The first player on the list for today is Ketel Marte, who is currently listed as a second baseman on the Diamondbacks. This is a player that in the past has been rated very highly and has had very high potential. Currently, though, he's sitting as a 73 overall with C potential at 29 years old. So really, there's nothing here that's going to jump out to say that this player is going to be an all-star or anything like that. Not a whole lot of progression available for him or anything like that. But again, at that 29 age slot, you're going to be able to get a couple of years of production out of him. The other things that I'm liking out of this player are his secondary positions. We know that he's capable of playing shortstop, and he's also capable of playing all of the outfield positions. To boot with that, he's also very good against lefties. So if you need a batter that can help you out in your lineup against left-handed pitchers, this is kind of the guy for you. Not so good against righties, but 92 contact versus left and 62 power versus left. If you find yourself going up against a lot of left-handed pitchers, this might be the guy for you. The other statistics that are pretty solid for this guy are his vision, discipline, and clutch, which are going to be super helpful for him. 79 vision, 60 discipline, and 75 clutch. And I want to add a little mention there. I want to thank a commenter from my previous video who shouted out to say that clutch now replaces your contact rating on both sides whenever you have players in scoring position. So that's super helpful to know and super helpful to have on a player, because that means that he's basically going to be getting 75 contact when he has runners in scoring position, which again is super useful. He's got solid durability and he's a decent defender. Not great at fielding, not great at reaction, so he's not going to be an excellent defensive defender, but he does have the flexibility positionally and can really add some value to you against left-handed pitchers. The next player up in today's video is going to be Adam Frazier, a former Pittsburgh Pirate, now a Baltimore Oriole. He is another player that's going to have a lot of position flexibility, as will a lot of these second base players. They're typically players that can play around at different positions, being able to play third base, shortstop, and everywhere in the outfield. He's going to be a player that is much better defensively than what we just looked at, having a very good arm, really good arm accuracy, and pretty good fielding and reaction to boot. So he's going to be pretty serviceable on the defensive side of things, but again, he's going to have a pretty solid bat as well. 77 contact versus right is very solid. He's got 90 vision, which again is going to help out in simulation style things. If you guys are simulating more games or simulating a bunch of games, this will help this player plug into your lineup and do well. He's not great in really any other particular category, but again, that flexibility as a 73 overall, not going to cost you a whole lot. At 31 years old, I can see him hanging around for a couple of years and really filling a decent role within your lineup. It's going to be really hard to talk about second base without looking at Brendan Donovan. Now, this is a player that actually has a little bit of development left to go at 26 years old and has the potential to grow even further. This is a guy that, again, has the position flexibility, 73 overall C potential, and like I said, 26 years old. But the really nice highlight here for this player is going to be his bat. He's got 80 contact versus right and 79 contact versus left, which is more than you're ever going to need for most players within franchise mode. He doesn't have a whole lot of power to go with it, but that's not necessarily always going to be the case with a second baseman. He does have good vision, discipline, and batting clutch, which is fantastic. I mean, this guy is going to be able to really excel at the plate. Another little fun tidbit there is that he is from Germany, which I think is pretty cool. This is a guy that I really, really like a lot if you can find a way to acquire him. At the number 4 spot on this list, we have Santiago Espinal, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, of the Blue Jays. Second baseman who, again, has a little bit of flexibility, being able to play third base, shortstop, and center field. Not great athletically, so I don't know how much you'd actually utilize him in center field, but defensively speaking is very solid with good fielding, good arm accuracy, and good reaction. He just doesn't have a big arm in general. He does have very good plate ability, though. 70 contact versus right, 90 69 contact versus left. Not a whole lot of power, but pretty solid vision. This is going to be a pretty solid player at the plate for you at 28 years old. You're going to get at least a handful of years of production out of this player, and I could see him being really serviceable both defensively and at the plate for you. And like I said, he has some flexibility, so you're going to be able to bounce him around in your lineup as kind of a key attribute that can be moved around, that can be utilized in different ways. So a bunch of names so far on this list that have that position flexibility, and this is another one that I really like. It's always going to be pretty difficult to go through a second base list and not list off Dee Gordon. Dee Gordon's a player that has had some flashes of success within his career, maybe even more so than that at times, but again is going to provide a good bit of value to you in franchise mode still at the age of 33. This is going to be much more of a rental style of player, considering he's a 68 overall and a C potential, but he does provide a good bit of athleticism and base stealing ability that none of the other prospects or none of the other players on this list so far have been able to provide. In addition, this guy is very comfortable playing in the outfield. With that 72 speed, 86 stealing, and 75 base running aggression, you're going to get a lot of production out of this guy in your lineup, especially towards the top of the lineup as a leadoff type of a hitter. He has 70 contact versus right and 64 contact versus left, and we really don't need to look much past that to see that this guy alone is going to be able to provide production in that area. But that's not where it stops for him. He's got very good plate vision, which is pretty solid. He's got a decent clutch rating. Unfortunately, that's going to drop his contact in situations where players are in scoring position, but more often than not, you're going to have this guy on base as opposed to somebody else. And then he has very good bunting ability, which is again going to be pretty helpful for you. He's not the best at fielding, but having a player that has that athleticism, has that base running ability, that has that bunting ability is going to provide some different opportunities for you in your lineup that you might not otherwise get from most of the players that you're finding within the MLB. Next up is going to be our first official prospect on this list in Nick Madrigal. The 66 overall B potential 26-year-old second baseman has a lot to look forward to in MLB The Show franchises anyway. This is a guy that has really good contact for a 66 overall. 76 versus lefties and 69 versus righties. He's also got really good vision, decent enough batting clutch, decent bunting stats, and he's got pretty solid fielding as well. This is a player that is a high potential player that you're going to be able to probably steal away from the Cubs for a reasonable price. I mean, sitting as a 66 overall B potential at 26 years old, it's not like this guy's going to be considered a top prospect within MLB The Show franchises anyway, so I think you're going to be able to get him for a pretty reasonable price, and if you want somebody that has that growth potential, this would be one of the first players that I take a look at. He's got a handful of years of growth left, and he really doesn't need to grow a whole lot to be a serviceable player for you. Sure, you might like to add a little bit more power, maybe round out those contact numbers a little bit and help his fielding numbers just a bit, but he really doesn't have a long ways to go to compete with other major league second basemen in terms of the actual ratings that we're seeing here. And I have to go back really quick and recap the quirks for these players. There's only two players that do have quirks that are going to add extra value to them. Number one being Ketel Marte, who has the bad ball hitter quirk, which means he's going to excel at hitting pitches outside the strike zone, which is a really handy one to have, especially for a player that you're looking to produce at the plate more than anything else. And then the other player that actually has a ton of quirks is Brendan Donovan, and presents himself as maybe one of the top value players on this list overall, who has the home ball, rally monkey, unfazed fighter, breaking ball hitter, situational hitter, and bad ball hitter quirks. That is a mad number of quirks that this player has, and I would really look to add this guy to the team, especially considering not only what we already talked about with this guy, but all of those quirks that are going to help him perform within your franchise. Next up, I'd like to point out a prospect in the Boston Red Sox farm system in David Hamilton, a 25-year-old second baseman that can also play shortstop that is going to have some growth potential for you, that is a super good athlete. Not many players that you're going to find at this position are going to be great athletes like this. He's got very good speed at 91, the best that we've seen so far. Good stealing and decent base running aggression for a player that is going to be looked at as a prospect. That's pretty good because those numbers are hopefully going to grow. He's good defensively. 79 reaction is fantastic for a prospect type of a player. 65 in arm and arm accuracy, and 70 in in his fielding. He's just got to have a good bit of work done on him at the plate. At the 8th spot, I wanted to highlight a player that has a really good arm that you can build on. At 24 years old, 63 overall, Otto Lopez is going to be a player to watch. With a 78 arm starting out as a 24-year-old 63 over, that's pretty solid, and a player that can play all outfield positions as well as third and shortstop. This guy has a lot of potential defensively. It's not too often that you're going to find prospects that have that big arm, and that's always something I'm personally on the lookout for in my franchises, especially when I play as teams as the Pirates and whatnot. They really just don't have that type of an arm anywhere in their farm system. This guy has a lot more value than a traditional 63 overall C potential just because of that arm alone. He does sport 72 contact versus lefties though, and 53 versus righties, so there is the ability to build on that and get more out of him on both sides of the ball. His vision, discipline, and clutch aren't too bad either. His speed's a 60, so all things considered, I really think that this guy could develop into a very, very good ball player in pretty much any franchise if you just give him a little bit of time. With the next to last spot on this list, I wanted to highlight a power hitter, and they're really, really hard to come by at the second base position, so we're going to highlight Rodolfo Castro, a player that I have personally had a ton of success with, but doesn't necessarily meet what I'm looking for power requirements. Typically, I like to highlight somebody that has power versus righties for the most part, because that means that they're going to have a general better success hitting home runs, but this is a player that's going to need some work. As a 72 overall C potential 23-year-old, there's a lot of room for growth there, and it's a pretty good jumping off point. This might be a little bit more of an expensive player to get, but the Pirates have so many infield prospects that it won't matter. You can probably acquire this guy no problem whatsoever, and he also does have a good arm at 77 arm strength. That's really solid, but the real highlight here is that he has that 89 power against lefties, which is going to be really good. He's got 58 power versus righties, which is still very, very good for second baseman, and in fact, that's above average. There's not a lot of second basemen out there that even have power into the 60s, so it was pretty hard to come by. And then he does have 67 contact versus left. It's just that contact versus right that's really going to need some work, but once you do get this guy up after a couple of years, develop him, put some time into him, he's going to be a monster. And in year 1 and year 2 for me in franchise mode, he's been really good already, just as a 72 rated player and with the ratings that he has. And with the final spot on this list, I wanted to make sure we highlight another prospect, and I think I found a very good candidate for you all in franchise mode in Raynel Delgado. This guy actually has the stats to build on to become a very, very solid ball player with 50 plus contact on both sides, and then really good defensive ability right out of the gates. 68 fielding, 66 arm power, 60 accuracy, 70 reaction, and really good athleticism at 74 speed for a guy that's a 55 overall. This, I think, could absolutely be a steal in any franchise mode in MLB The Show 23, considering he's only a 55 overall B. It's really not going to be expensive to get a prospect like that, but I guarantee you that within a couple of seasons, this guy's going to be providing massive value to your organization, and this guy could truly be the best steal of the class. I kind of like what we have going on here with these videos, where we end up with the best potential prospect or the best potential hidden gem player in the 10 spot on every single list, so maybe I'm going to try to keep that going. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments section below. Hopefully you found this video useful or informative in some way, and if you did, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you have a good one.